I'm a bad motherfucker.
Sir, you know your President Biden well.
Yes, I do.
You've been working in several media organizations from PBS, CNBC, MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, and you've been covering this field well, and you know the American politicians. And now you've been following Putin, and you did a very lengthy interview with this gentleman. And for sure, to interview them, you did your homework and you did your research. Comparing the culture, the competence between Vladimir Putin and Biden, how do you see the two men now running the world?
I mean, if this were boxing, the fight would be called by the medic. And I say that as an American, and I don't have another passport. I don't plan to ever leave my country. My family's been there hundreds of years, and I love it. I am a patriotic American. And I grieve when I see that the president is non-compos menace, and that in my country, it is considered very rude to say that. And you sort of wonder, how did you get to a place where you have an incompetent president who's driven not simply the standard of living, but life expectancy downward, and no one feels free to say that? That's not a political observation. It's a statement of fact, which is provable empirically. And the most radicalizing thing I would just say, for me, in the 8 days I spent in Moscow, was not simply the leader of the country, who of course is impressive. It's the largest landmass in the world. And it's wildly diverse, linguistically, culturally, religiously. It's hard to run a country like that for 24 years, whether you like it or not. So an incapable person couldn't do that. He is very capable, and many of you know him, and you know that. What was radicalizing, very shocking, and very disturbing for me was the city of Moscow, where I'd never been, the biggest city in Europe, 13 million people. And it is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the US government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. It's architecture, it's food, it's service than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live. That don't have rampant inflation, where you're not going to get raped.
Sir, excuse me.
What is that?
Excuse me. Are you anti-American model?
No, I am the most pro-American.
So he's telling you that the problems that are in every American city right now, they don't exist in these other cities around the world. I was always told that the United States is the greatest country in the world. And we have things other places don't have. And he's just traveling around, going to all these cities. They don't have these problems that we have. They don't have homeless people everywhere, under every bridge. They don't have drug addicts following you to your car when you come out of the 7-Eleven. They don't have everything locked up and lock and key when you go to a Target. They don't. That's what he's saying. But we do have that here. And we don't have high-speed train, rail. We don't have free college. We don't have universal health care. We have health care that bankrupts you if you get really sick. People go, I have people tell me I'm a tour. Jimmy, I got great health care. I go, have you been sick yet? They go, no. I go, well, wait till you get sick. And wait till you see all those bills that pile up. I had great health. I had the best plan you could have with Blue Cross when I got sick. Still went bankrupt. Because I was sick for years. I was sick for 2 years. At least. If not longer. Wait till you get really sick. I go, have you been sick? Have you been really sick? No. So he's saying, so other countries have things we don't have now. And the only reason is because we're run by criminals. For real. Criminals.
I'm 54. I was born in 1969. I grew up in a country that had cities like Moscow and Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Singapore and Tokyo. And we no longer have them. And what I have discovered is that's a voluntary choice. As inflation is, as you heard in that fascinating last panel, inflation is the product of choices made mostly by the central bank, not exclusively, but by policymakers. Crime, same. You don't have to have crime, actually. If you don't my children don't smoke marijuana at the breakfast table. Why? Because I won't allow them. It's very simple. It's a short conversation. No. And you can run your country the same way. We're not going to put up with that, so don't do it. And people understand that. Filth, graffiti, Paris, one of my favorite cities, New York, one of my favorite cities, are filthy. And part of the reason they're filthy is because people spray paint obscenities on buildings and no one cleans it up. So that encourages more people to do the same. And our policymakers, for some reason, don't notice this. London, another one of my favorite cities. You see English girls begging for drugs on the sidewalk. And I thought to myself, if I'm Boris Johnson, who briefly and very badly ran that country, I would ask myself, like, wait a second, my countrymen are begging for drugs on the street. Maybe I should do something about that. But no, he'll show up and give some speech about Ukraine and how we need to send, more cluster bombs to the brave Ukrainians. What are you doing?
You mentioned Ukraine. By talking to this
I mean, isn't that shocking to people? He's talking about, you go to all these other countries. Go to all of these cities, or these international cities. They're much better than any city in America. You go to Paris, you go to New York, they're filthy now.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit